Welcome back to Voices of Impact, the show where we explore the stories, identity shifts, and conversations shaping the future of leadership, business, and human potential. Today, we're diving beneath performance, productivity, and success into something far more foundational. So, what if the greatest barrier to your next level isn't a lack of talent, opportunity, or only motivation, right? But the beliefs quietly shaping how you see yourself. Because every decision we make, every opportunity we pursue, and every relationship we build, and every ceiling we experience is really influenced by an identity we've often hit our head rather than consciously chosen. Today's guest believes leadership isn't first about influence over others, it's about understanding the internal stories that influence us. So I'm honored to welcome Dr. W. Garrett Goggans. So Garrett is a leadership strategist, speaker, executive coach, and founder of Goggans Consulting. He helps leaders, executives, and organizations move beyond the surface level performance to uncover the beliefs, internal patterns, and hidden friction that shape how people lead, communicate, and create impact. His work sits at the intersection of leadership psychology, identity, and human development, helping leaders expand not simply by doing more, but becoming more aligned with who they truly are. So, what makes this conversation especially meaningful is how closely our work intersects, right? Because that's exactly how what I believe in. Today, we explore why lasting leadership isn't built through more hustle and grinding, which, of course, at times it's fine, but it's really through transforming the beliefs that shape how we think, lead, and live. So great to have you on Voices of Impact, Garrett.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Amazing. So let's get started. Let's just start from the beginning. Was there a defining moment or perhaps a season of life that made you realize leadership wasn't really about like performance, but about the beliefs underneath it?
For me, yeah, I think the in the leadership aspect, I think for me was when I first became where I led my first team managed a team, however you want to say it, whatever the position title for that, wherever you are was at. It was I had gone through just stages of personal development, personal growth for myself, and leading myself through a lot of what we're about to talk about today. But when I had my first team, they were notably the worst performing team in their line of business internationally. And I had known all the leaders who were there before me. And I came to this understanding real just quickly that for things to shift and to change and to get out of the place that they were in, it was a leadership that had to change. And so I that was the catalyst for me is I had to understand honestly I didn't know what to do. I just went through a gut feeling of, well, let me get these guys through the personal growth and personal discovery that I went through because I saw how it truly shaped my life. And it became very apparent when I asked them in each individually, what do you need from me as a leader to be successful? And probably 80% of them said, I have no idea. No one's asked me that before. And that was a telltale sign for me. So we jumped into, well, let's understand each other. What do you need? You obviously know what I expect because I expect performance. I expect metrics to be hit. I expect these things, but what is it that you expect? And what is it you want out of life? And what is it you want from your career? And that shifted everything. So I think it was that moment right there that was just that aha moment that there's something different that needed to happen.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. This is very deep, and asking the right questions to people makes a difference. And whatever you just said is what I just went through in the past 2 weeks as I'm building my team. I did have a team of six and like about seven, and then I had to have three people leave. And the ones I really asked the right questions, so I really take the time for about 35 minutes to 40 minutes asking them these questions that you just asked, right? Like, what do you need from me? Right? I didn't lead with immediately like numbers and metrics. I used the other side because I naturally am a leader and I know I have leadership skills. And I was like, yeah, what do you need from me? Like, what do you look for in a CEO? What do you look for in a company? What kind of culture do you thrive in? And that made a difference. And they were like, this is the question I want. Like, no, actually, like you said, they're like, I went to companies that I felt like I performed well, but they didn't care about me. They didn't respect me. And I was like, I immediately like set the expectations of like, I lead with values first. Like this call is about, are we aligned on values? Are we aligned on
Mhm.
mission? Right? This is about long-term opportunities. So it's not for short term. And some of them like who had to leave, like you said, the worst performers, it really stemmed from that. It was just like that motivation was there, but they didn't believe that they could do it. Like they were
Mhm.
just impatient. And it came from those inner, deeper questions that I should have asked. And to your point, same thing. When you're first building a team, you might not be aware. Like you kind of assume, like, okay, I went through the personal growth and they're going to probably be the same. But these are lessons that we learn, that asking the right questions and making sure that they have the leadership skills and they know for themselves. Like as a career coach, I've been there, right? Like I always tell people, when you kind of go into a company or any kind of culture, ask, like, does this really align with them? So
Mm. Yeah.
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
love, and you use the term aligned. And I think that's the most important thing is if we don't know what they are looking for out of their career in life in general, sometimes, how can we tell whether we're aligned or not, right? So we have our organization's values and the mission, and we're wanting this organization to go in the right direction, and to, in the corporate world, start to force that direction on our people. Like, this is where we're going. Either you're on board or you're not. And I think the trick, which really makes a good leader, is to say, well, how, let's align with what we're doing with what you want to do. So you tell me what you want, and I can
Mhm.
tell you where that fits in with what I'm doing and how I can help you grow into that, to that individual, that leader that you're looking to be. And it's a win-win. And for me, the metrics just kind of follow that. Yes, we look at metrics because they tell a snapshot of where we are. Is that growth happening? Where are some gaps that we need to look at? But it really is taking that time to saying, this is where we fit together. And then your people get excited because they're like, yes, this is exactly what I, then they, I'm owning this direction for myself because I'm on board with what you're doing. It matches with what I'm doing. And that's when we get that sustainable performance, that sustainable motivation, is because they have ownership into what everything, how everything is going on. You're supporting them and they're supporting you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all starts from that. And I think that's kind of where the challenge comes in with this market is, sometimes, like, you and I think we're kind of forming like a startup to mid-size, and a lot of people kind of assume it like, okay, this is corporate. Like I run a startup, and I told I was just being frank. And I think that's what it is, that people just get so excited in the beginning. And I'm like, hey, like, let's set realistic expectations. I'm glad you're excited. We're connected. We have a similar mission. But I also give them a practical interview. I was like, these are the metrics. Like, hey, this is the connection that we have. We're aligned on values, but at the same time, there's another side that I made a mistake of just onboarding them, because I was excited. And I think that was also, I needed to be self aware of, as a leader, like, it's important to balance, like, are they empathetic, and but are they also like disciplined? Are they hitting their numbers?
Mm.
Because having one or the other is going to cause friction. So I also give them the practical assessment and being realistic expectations. Like, okay, well, you have this part, but these are the numbers. It's going to take some time,
Mm.
right? And it's going to be slow at times, it's going to be unpredictable. Like, how do you really navigate those challenges? And then they're like, oh, I didn't realize that. So asking like deeper questions is very key. And I love how you said ownership. A lot of the performers, and I mentioned this, I was just thinking about this. There's the rock star performers, we call it the 1%. And then there's like the 99%, which are like the okay ones. And I always ask this question to them. I was like, what, differentiates the normal, performers, like the team members, with the top performers? And one person, she came to me saying, like, it's the mindset, right? It's the mindset, it's the confidence and the belief that I
Mm.
can do it, even if it takes time, even if I don't see results in person and in reality yet, right? It's the persistence and it's the resilience. And that made me understand, like, this is the person that I know is going to be a top performer. And I
Mm.
also ask, like, okay, what are your experiences? And she was a fitness trainer. And I know how much it requires a lot of discipline and motivation to lose weight and go into fitness and work out. So I look at the bigger picture first to see, like you said, really who they are as a person, as a whole, before I go into like, here are the metrics, here are the thing, and then, like, let's just kind of hire them. So it really starts from the internal belief that yes, there are going to be times of unpredictability, but can I really make this happen? So
Yeah.
yeah. And I was look at my next question. So what belief about yourself did you release before the leader that you are today?
I had a big identity issue, I guess we will say, we'll just call it an issue. A lot of healing that I had to go through for myself. And it goes back when I was younger. So I ran away from home when I was 16, dropped out of high school. And I went through that. I came through that. Obviously, I have a doctorate in computer science, and I had all that growth and all the external, what people would look at success externally. But I was still that 16-year-old boy who had ran away and wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. Was I good enough? I didn't. I was constantly fighting myself with that confidence of, can I truly do with what I've done, because I didn't go that ordinary path of, I had to homeschool for my last few years of high school when I finally decided to go back. And so it was just struggling with the confidence, struggling with some guilt that I had because of that part that I went through. So and for me, guilt was probably the biggest one. Guilt is a very interesting filter that we look through, and it allows us to get so far in what I just climbing up that success ladder, but then you feel unworthy of having that, so you self-sabotage, you bring yourself back down. That was the biggest shift that I had to go through. I had to heal from all that guilt and all that shame and all those pieces that said you can finally step into being this leader, because one, you are good enough, you are worthy enough, and you do have the skill sets and you can do this. And so releasing that really just catapulted me to that next level. And I think going through that, to your point, even with those, that 1%, or whether it's your 80-20%, 20% is your high performers, depending on the size of your team, we can look at those lower performers then and have a belief in them and say, you can get to that 1%. How do you know, right? Because they're struggling with confidence, like you were saying as well. Well, I know because I did it. I went through it, and you can share your backstory. But I think that shift for me was the biggest thing that helped me step into being a leader, and also to be able to have the conversation that we're having today. I had a different perspective on what that looked like. And so I think it was just a very important key moment in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing and turning that, yeah, that painful moments into powerful moments. Like, it's all lessons that we learn, right? And it's really important that I love how you were just self aware and you're willing to go deep, because I've seen people who are like in victim mode and they're just like, it's probably the market, it's probably this, it's probably that. And they just kind of go by ears without really healing and going within. But I love how you talked about like, these are the wounds that I have. This is, I had to heal from it. And there was a lot of guilt and shame. And even for me, that was difficult. I still go through that. And someone told me, like, there's probably some mother wound, father wounds, like going in deeper. And there was a lot of resentment that I had that wasn't mine. And I carried it from, like, I know I was talking to my other sisters about this, and a lot of it is not even ours, right? It comes from other places and generations, and I blamed myself for it. So similarly, I felt guilty that I would make people feel different, or I would just unintentionally hurt. And I felt like maybe I was doing something wrong, but in reality, it wasn't about me at all. And I was carrying all of those burdens.
Yeah.
So it's really important, like you said, not everyone is able to do this, but really going deep inward, and you're doing your shadow work and being like, why is this coming up? And I need to release it and let it go.
Yeah.
And rather than harboring that resentment, because that still keeps coming up for people. And I've had people who, even my team members, who put everything on me, and I was like, you know what, it's fine, right? It's, hurt people hurt others, right? So
Yeah.
it's really about, we have to stand tall in our own power and understand, like, you know what, they're in that becoming stage, right? They're in that transition, and it's not about us. And I love what you said. So thank you so much for saying that, right? That releasing certain deeper aspects, whether that's guilt or shame or perfectionism, whatever that is, really helps you get to that next level rather than like avoiding it. So absolutely.
Yeah. I love that term you use, becoming. I think it's an important term, right? It gets us out of that. I mean, anybody looks at Carol Dweck's work with growth and fixed mindset, there's that shift in just the language that we utilize too. We're not fixed, we're becoming. We're not necessarily stuck in where we're at, but we have to go do the work. And again, what's going to keep that 1% from the 99%, or the 80% from the 20%, is the ones who are willing to go and do the work. your 1% already has a confidence, and whether they had to do the work, whether it was nurtured or natured to that aspect, some people just step into that, but I think most of it's going to be nurtured. Their upbringing is going to help them have that confidence, and they go through some things that give them that confidence. But those other ones that want to hit that level, there's work that has to be done, and some will never get there because they just are not willing to do the work. And what we're talking about, I think today, will bring out some of that natural selection. They're either going to want to, they're going to select themselves, or select themselves in, or they're going to select themselves out because they don't want to. And that's okay, really. It's just whatever journey that's best for you is the one that's gonna be best for you. Eventually, maybe you'll get there, and it's just okay. So, but that becoming is just a key phrase as why we're doing this, because in that personal development, once we ask those deeper questions, that yes, I want to do this. Are you willing to do the work? Whatever it takes, read books, whatever I can throw at you, because I'm going to help you get there. I truly am going to do everything I possibly know to do to help you get there, but I can't get you there myself. That's something that you have to, again, take that ownership on. And I always had to use that term, like, you're not there yet, right? Yet you're becoming, you're working through that. We can't expect immediate results tomorrow, and just know that there is the other side. So I love that you use that. I think it's just perfect terminology for anybody who's feeling stuck or fixed, or wanting to progress into a very specific way, but feel like it's going slowly. They're becoming, and we have to celebrate those small successes. And so I just appreciate that you utilize that terminology.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a huge thing, right? And we just had a workshop yesterday, and all of these things kept coming up, the similar themes of like trusting the process. I'm in that transition. Like when I think about the future self of in that becoming stage, I kind of just step back because of fear, right?
Mm.
Or especially with high achieving people. And I had one team member who had to leave, and she was like, yeah, like it was not even 3 weeks in, and she was just giving up. And I was like, it takes time, right? And yeah, and I think I was just sitting there. I was like, you know what? I was actually helping her becoming. We always have this in our team is, I'm going through my own journey of identity and the becoming, and I help them out. Like, here are the resources. I ask on a weekly team meeting, like, how are you managing your energy? How are you managing your time? Is this the woman you're becoming? Is this the man you're becoming? I also have men on my team. And they nod their head. And at the end of the day, like, they just give up. So to your point, I think just taking ownership, sometimes as leaders, like, especially for me, I tend to be a little empathetic. So we tend to handhold some people, but at the same time, like you said, as leaders, we need to just kind of step back and be like, what, are they taking ownership? And if they're not, where is this coming from? And if it's just not aligned, let them go, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's what my business partner said is just let them know. It's fine. It's not aligned. And I was happy in a way, because at the end of the day, on my team, I want high performers, but who really believe in themselves.
Mm.
And that was my next question is the difference between I know we live in a world who's really obsessed with productivity and motivation, which is really good. But why do you believe that we've been solving the wrong problem? So we haven't really been teaching anyone about these things that we're talking about, like really going underneath and overcoming these limiting patterns and beliefs.
I feel we are how do I say this? We're performance by pressure. I guess that's the best way to say it. And that can be, excuse me, that can be pressure in positive pressure or negative pressure. We can do corrective actions and things like that to try to drive the behavior that we're looking for, or we can do incentive programs and and let's go for this goal, and you can get a bonus pay and all it's the positive, but it's still pressure. We're putting pressure to drive a behavior to get a result, and I think that's just the way we've always done it. We do it backwards. We look at, here's the metric, I know what behavior I need to hit that metric, and I think that's good information. We have to have that data. But so with that behavior, we're trying to push the behavior, but we fail to understand that behavior in and of itself is an output of something. And I took a leadership class when I first became the leader. We had to go through their training, and they were rattling off, these are the things that you're going to have to go through. It's going to be behavior. And then they quickly flashed on this thing called belief. And I had this awareness because of the journey that I went through, is that belief drives behavior. And there's all kinds of different types of belief. When we start to really get into the human part of what that looks like, we give a task to our people. We say, we want you to do this. We want you to show up this way. We want you to show up this way or that way. And information goes into our conscious mind. It goes and we impress that to our subconscious. And there's a belief that it has to go through that belief filter of, am I the individual that can do it that way? One, there's an identity belief. There's another belief of, do they really care about my work, like we just talked about? Because if we don't feel like we're valued or cared for, we don't believe that, we're not going to perform at the way that we really can't perform. We're like, well, what's the point? They just want to utilize me so they can make money, right? When we can hear that in their narrative, there's all kinds of different beliefs that information goes through before we respond or react. And I think if it's a program belief, we're going to react because it's just a program response. So we've always done it, this pressurized way, positive or negative, and we don't understand that there's the belief piece. And I think anybody that really goes deep into the work, like, you and you're bringing your people through, and those who are really involved in that personal growth, personal development, they get it. They understand that there's shifts that I have to do, beliefs that I have to do. There's an identity. We talked about identity, and that identity shift that I have to go through. And when that 1% or 3% of people who are doing that growth in the right way, they've gone deep enough to understand that I have to shift my beliefs about who I am and where I'm going and what I'm doing. And it's just that knowledge is not there. I think it's starting to grow a little bit the more we have success coaches and corporate coaches and leadership coaches who have done that work and understand that it's becoming more and more of a thing, but it's still, the masses has not bought into that because that's not the way we've always done it. And I think that's really the issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you just went really deep in is, yeah, subconsciously, like, there's that belief I can, and they're really excited, and it's the environment as well. But at the same time, it's also like a belief that reality comes in, and then fear just suddenly comes in. Where's that fear coming from? Right. So when I look at reality, so I know a lot of the women that I talk to have this problem that they're like, okay, well, I follow my intuition. I'm good. I feel energetic, all of that expansive. But as soon as you put like a number on it, like you need to, or you like, this is the task and you need to do it in like, 3 days or whatever, or send messages a day. It's like immediately they go into logic and they're just like, should I follow my heart, the logic? Like it's a little bit of a balance that they couldn't handle, and it's definitely difficult, and it starts from where you, like you said, is really the inner belief. Like we can go way deeper into this, but it's the mindset piece.
Mm-hmm.
And when I tell them, and I'm like, yeah, it's very normal, right? And giving that validation, and the validation has to come from internal, but sometimes like I just hold them accountable, like it's okay, it's part of the process. Like imagine you stepping into this role, right? So just kind of feel into it, and I kind of help them understand, like, step into it. What are the different habits? I ask them, like, do you meditate? Do you do this? Do you do that? And I really integrate personal development as much as possible, than just talk about, hey, well, where are the numbers? How come the KPIs aren't hit? And like to your point, it's the pressure that makes them like, you know what, I can't do this anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think forming that culture is first, and the foundation is very key. And that's what I advocate for in my team and my organization. I just said this to my team members. I was like, for sustainable performance, like you said, in sustainable business and growth, it is going to be a little slow in the beginning, right? It's going to be foundational, and we're going to all work together to understand like where are your strengths, where are your areas of improvement, like what are some gaps, and knowing what their gaps are. So I ask these questions as well. Where do you see yourself in like 1 year? Is this aligned to your vision? Like, where are some areas that you want to learn or you want to improve? So they're more self-aware, and that's where the beliefs come from. Because also, like, I think this was also a struggle that I had, I think last year. I didn't believe I deserved the best a lot of times, right? Because of the conditioning that I had. Everyone kept telling me, like, you're going to just be like that okay person. And that just kind of hit me a lot of times. So, to your point, it's really important to just keep understanding your EQ and emotional regulation. Where is this all coming from? and not try to like and channel it in a healthier way, right? So it all
Okay.
starts from that. I totally agree.
Yeah, I think that, and again, I love that you keep bringing out these points, right? So there's that gap, and we go back to the identity, and you're saying, and I think if people understood why we ask, where do you see yourself in 1 year? What's your 5 year goal, quote unquote goal? And if we can ask it in a way that, what is it you want? That's the question that we originally were started with. What is it you want from your career? What does that look like? And when you see yourself as successful, what does that mean? And well, I want this. This is what I want. This is my dream. This is my aspiration. And they're like, cool. Why do you want that? And we tap into this why, and Simon Sinek's, start with why. And it's important because we've had this theme even just in our conversation. When it gets hard, we want to go do that thing, but it's going to get hard because we're going to have to fight with ourselves, our identity, the reality of everything that's coming in. What's your purpose? And that purpose is what's going to keep you, again, motivated. It's that autonomous motivation or internal motivation, internal drive, because there's a passion behind why you want to get to where you're going. And then that third piece is, well, okay, who is that successful person? What are the characteristics and skill sets and all the things that that person has? So when you define that, you have this kind of blueprint of what's supposed to happen. Then we look at the person that we are today and say, what needs to shift to get there? And that's that growth, that's the development. And I think what a lot of people try to do is they get this laundry list of things that aren't necessarily aligned, and then they go, whoa, that's a lot. And then they go, what's the point? We give up. And we're like, no, we're just going to work on this one item at a time. We don't overwhelm. This is our personal development growth. This is the first piece we're going to work on. And again, they have ownership and buy-in, because that little thing that we're going to work on is going to get them to that aspirational goal. But that's what we ask that. Where do you see yourself in a year? Where do you see yourself in this? So we know on what are those pieces that we can work on. And then as leaders, we celebrate that. I call it the evidence. When they show up and they're doing the thing that we're asking them to do in that development process, we celebrate that with them. Like, man, you're doing this. This is awesome.
Right.
This is great. Look at the growth. Already in 3 days, you've done so much than what you have in the past 3 weeks. And that gives them their own evidence to start believing in themselves. And I think as a leader, it comes back to belief. They're not going to have the belief, so we have to give them ours. That we have to have so much belief in them that they can't help but to believe in themselves. Eventually, they'll stop borrowing ours and they'll have their own, but we have to have it for them. And I think sometimes in leadership that lacks. We just tell them you're just not good enough, right? And they hear that all their lives, like, hey, you're just going to be an okay person. All right, well, that's great. So we give them that belief and let them know you can excel, you can progress past this. But that's the growth path. And so again, just another aspect that you brought out. I think leadership, they're not doing it. They're just not doing it at the capacity I think that they really need to be done.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned the capacity. It's just, and this is all of what I help my clients and everyone. Like, this is exactly what I did when I felt like when I had to go to my next level, and I just did that 2, 3 months ago. I had to expand my capacity mentally, emotionally, and energetically. And that came from really being intentional. And I went back to like, what do I truly value?
Mm.
And I love when you said the purpose, right? That's what really keeps you going. And during some challenges that I had, I was like, sometimes we always go back to that, like, am I meant for this? Am I good enough? And I go back and see, like, you know what? This is my purpose. This is my calling. This is my gift, right? I'm here for a reason. That's my why. And I just keep moving forward. That motivation has to come from the internal,
Mm.
right? And some people, when I asked them on my team at first, a lot of them were like, you know what, Mina, I'm in it for the long term. I'm in it because I want financial freedom. I want time freedom. I want to spend time with my family. And I know that I didn't have that in corporate. Like, I work in corporate job. And I ask these questions, like, and asking the in-depth questions makes a huge difference earlier on, which I know
Mm.
we tend to overlook. But I was like, why do you want to be in this role? Right. And one of them said, like, I get some money, right? And I was like, okay, yeah, and that's nice, right? That's nice that you want the income, you have good income potential. But then I realized the ones who said the money or income, they just gave up easily, right? Because
Mm.
that motivation belief wasn't deep enough for them. It wasn't internal. It came from the external validation, like this is what I'm supposed to do, survival mode. right? And then the ones who were like, I'm not in survival mode, but I'm looking at the next level identity. Like, who am I becoming? And it came from a place of like, I want to become that person who has that freedom, right? And then that made a difference. And they stayed for a long time, right? And they had that growth mindset. I have people on my team who've been with me for like more than a year, and they were like, we had, our feedback, and I would give them feedback, and they were like, yeah, we're not in it for just money. Like, I just had my own team member saying, like, like, I referred her to people, and we always celebrate wins. And she was like, thank you so much, like, you're a blessing, because that's what I'm like looking for. And these are the kind of things that I think it starts with values led leadership, identity led leadership, really focusing on your culture first and setting that foundation and finding the right talent. And then, okay, are we hitting the numbers? That naturally follows, right? So
Yeah.
that's what a true great leader is, than just like you said, pressuring them and thinking about ourselves. And that comes from a leader who's able to give unconditional love, right? So if we're focusing on ourselves all the time, I want my business to grow, I want her to hit the numbers, I want to get revenue, they're going to feel that energy and leave. But I come from a place of like, I'm not needing this. I want all of us to impact the business and grow together. They were like, you know what, that's what I'm looking for. And then it just comes naturally, the metrics, right? So I
Yeah.
love what you said about everything. It's really the belief. And also another thing is the belief that we have to kind of share that belief with them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. And I always tell people, like, I want you to get the best, right? I feel like you deserve it. But then I also say, like, you have to work at it too, right? So, and I also share my own story. Like, I worked hard. I went through every weekend, I've overcome my fears. Like, even yesterday, today, I talked through it with myself, and they were like, okay, sure. And they end up not doing it, right? So at the end of the day, it's the internal, it's not the external,
Yeah.
right? So
Absolutely.
amazing. And yeah, so what's the truth about leadership you've become more convinced over the last decade? So just kind of reflecting on that.
A truth about leadership. I believe, uh, well, so truth for me is it's a weird word. So I think truth is very individualistic. So what's my truth? What's your truth? Is there a global universal truth? And maybe, I don't know that we found it. There's tons of books out there that says, hey, this is the truth, and this is the truth, and that's the truth. And they all revolve around, well, not all of them, but I think there is a theme around a lot of them that gets to the point of what you just said, that there's a unconditional love that has to happen. And what does that mean? And I think where we're at in leadership is we don't lead with the heart, right? We lead with the, like you said, that the intellect. And we talk about emotional intelligence or EQ. We can bring that, and in corporate world, it's all over the place. It's people engagement. We have people first culture. We're all emotionally
Right.
intelligent, and we have all these things, but we remove the one piece that we're talking about right now. And we can have the incentive programs, we can have the pizza parties, we can have all the things that are supposed to drive engagement. But if we don't have that just innate love for humanity to want to see them succeed, and because if my success is in direct relation to how I help them have success, and that just leads up the board. I think that needs to be the truth. It needs to be the undying truth for every leader, is that the people first is not about all that external triggers, the external things that help them get there. It's helping them to understand what their internal is. And with that awareness, the sky is the limit when it comes there. And
Yeah.
I think that needs to be the truth. So for me, that is my truth. It's whenever I get into a leadership position, and it sounds like this is your truth as well, it's let me get to the individual. This is what people first really means. It's
Mhm.
I'm going to develop the person first, and everything else is going to follow. And that's my truth. And I feel like that needs to be preached from the mountaintops. So, and I think the cultures will start to shift once we as leaders show up that way. We'll develop new leaders who will show up that way. And that will have that just domino effect, that exponential effect of nurturing new people in the leadership in the way that people first cultures was really meant to be. And I think that's my truth, and I believe it's your truth, and I believe it's a truth of a lot of leaders out there.
Yeah.
It just needs to be more understood and more practiced more with the masses.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and I love what you just said. I like when you said the corporate, like they preach it, saying like people first and everything. And so I did leadership programs and I was like, okay, sure, it's always EQ and everything. But when you're actually building a team, that's when you realize, like to your point from the beginning, we talked about, are we truly a leader, right? Are we really coming from a place of I want to help this person? Even it doesn't mean like for me, like even if my business isn't growing, it's fine, right? At the end of the day, it's like, are you happy here? Right? Are you becoming the person you're meant to be here? Whether that's my client or my team member or anyone I'm with, I'm also building a community and I always ask them, like, are you feeling safe? Like, are you feeling like you're becoming the better version of yourself here? And they all say yes, because we kind of foster that culture first, right?
Mm.
And I help them believe it. They're like, it's really that connection. They're like, Vina, like you made me feel seen and heard. And that was the first thing everyone keeps telling me, right? Like you really understood deep down what I truly want. Because they're not going to say it out loud. Like it's our job as a leader to kind of look at their cues and how their daily life is. Like a lot of them are busy with kids. I know mothers are there. And I'm like, I take your time, right? And I one person she on the team, she was like, something just came up last minute. So I couldn't, do all this work that you want me to do. And immediately most people say that they're people first. They'll be like, okay, well, you didn't hit the numbers today. Let's talk about it. I would be like, you know what? Okay, so what's going on?
Mm.
That empathy, right? You have to practice that, like you said, and we call it embodiment. And when I do, we talk, my culture is very, we have that, hey, hit the KPIs, but we lead from the heart, we lead from the feminine energy. And I'm like, okay, just take some time, kind of go from your head and what do you feel like into your body? And
Mm.
I go through these practices and they're like, yeah, I'm just feeling heavy. I'm just, there's a lot today with my kids. And I'm like, take the day off, right? Or do not work on weekends, right? Like I literally help them see that. Like they're just like, Vina gets it. So having that balance is very important. So it's the people first. Like it's one thing to say it and it's
Mm.
one thing to embody it. And the embodiment and the practice has to come from the leader itself first. So we need to make sure we're doing those things first before we have a leader do it or the team members do it. So yeah, it starts from within. So there's a lot of, textbook definitions, but we have to understand through our own lived experiences, like what true leadership is. Am I really practicing that myself? I talk about EQ, but are we emotionally regulated ourselves? Like,
Yeah.
are we releasing what we need to release ourselves? If we're not, then it's not going to work out, right? So we have to practice what we preach, right? So
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. And thank you so much for this conversation. I think it was just very important today. I know a lot of people who, your audience and my audience, they are in a place where in the becoming stages and they're building teams and they're probably needing to hear all of this, right? So thank you so much for sharing. And we'll have to go into the rapid fire round to get to know you a little bit. Okay, so let's see. Mountains or beach?
Oof. I would say mountains typically, but lately, the older I get, I'm leaning more and more and more to the beach. But for most of my life, it's been mountain.
Yeah, yeah. I love both. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I live in the East Coast, in DC, so there's barely many beaches. So I'm like wanting to go to the beach this summer. So yeah, I mean, and the mountains are beautiful. So yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is something people would be surprised to learn about you?
Most people are surprised to learn that I was a high school dropout. I think that's a bigger one. That's becoming less and less of a surprise because it's part of my journey, so I talk about it all the time. One thing that a lot of people would be surprised is that I used to suffer, I guess. I used to embody some severe social anxiety. I could not be in a group of people. I could not have a conversation like we were having today. And that just leads to a lot of growth. So I've passed out in public because there were too many people in my personal space, and it was a pretty bad thing. So just people are surprised because now I'm so much in the public and doing all the things that they're like, really, you have, and sometimes it still sparks up that social anxiety piece. Will get there if the crowd's too big, and I have to regulate myself through it. But yeah, so that's typically a big surprise when people find that out.
Yeah, and look where you are right now.
Yeah,
Right? So
yeah,
I love just your presence, your energy, your wisdom, and how you went deep. And it's just that growth. And looking back, like I can say a little similarly because I was a very introvert, shy person, and I never even knew how to like talk either in public. But I think over the time when we've gone through our own experiences and the fact that you're sharing your story so nicely on this podcast and so courageously is really inspiring to a lot of people out there because I have conversations on a daily basis and they struggle to really
Yeah.
talk about like, hey, these are the expectations I had. This is what I have to release. Like it's a struggle for them to say it. Like we do it on one, but in public to really own like, hey, I was a high school dropout, but here I am today. And yeah, like you're a doctor in computer science, which is amazing. And you're here today talking about healing and becoming, and especially for a lot of men too out there. I've been talking to. It's a lot. You're a role model for a lot of people. So thank you so much for what you're doing and how far you've become.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because the emotional intelligence part is and it's you see it in leadership. It's hard for men. We're supposed to be in a specific way, and leadership for women is hard for women because they're supposed to show up a specific way. I think it's hard for all of us, and men aren't supposed to show emotions. We're not supposed to do that. I am seeing a shift in that. I really, really am. Mental health is becoming a big thing in at least in the community where I'm at. There's tons of groups where guys can come and help them share what's going on. So there is the shift there, but I think it just goes across the board. There's the identity that we're expected to have, and people like you and me sharing my story and everybody sharing their journey is making it more acceptable to have a voice and to share that voice. And it's so important that that's where we get, because it's that's part of the healing journey. Is if we don't release that verbally, tell people about it, every time I share this, I heal that much more.
Mhm.
And if I can help others, that's great, but it helps me as well. So it's that rising tides lifting all the ships. And so the more that we can make this the normal, the greater society is going to be. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And thank you so much for being that example because, yeah, I've been in places where, especially where I come from, women of color and men of color, they struggle to show their emotions and it's still there. But I know that seeing people like you and men like you, and I had some other conversations, they're like, you know what? If he's doing it, I can do it. Like, why
Yeah.
can't I do it? And he's talking about his healing journey. Like, oh, like maybe I can as well. I have the permission to do it now because we're all conditioned
Yeah.
to not show emotion. Especially men have come to me saying, like, I never talked about this to anyone other than you, Vina. And I was like, well, thank you so much for being vulnerable. And it's nice because that is leadership, true leadership. So men have been taught leadership is like just being guarded and, hey, like this, right? But in reality, you also feel like it's a strength to be vulnerable and empathetic, even for a man,
Yeah.
right? And I just feel like that is true leadership. So thank you so much
Thank you.
for
I
sharing all
appreciate
of this and that giving the men to the permission to be like, yeah, you can own your voice and you can speak up as well. And it's okay to show that. So, and next would be if you could have dinner with any leader or anyone, it doesn't have to be a leader, past or present, who would it be?
if I could have dinner with anybody. So I would say one of my biggest mentors, and anybody who I followed is, their teachings I consider a mentor, whether I had direct conversation with them or not, would probably be Wayne Dyer. There's something about his teachings and just his energy. Like I'm just drawn to him and how he talks and the stories that he shares. And I don't know that I necessarily have bought into every aspect of his teachings, but there are some things that have really helped me in my journey. And he is that one person that I've kind of followed. I've read all of his books, watched all of his videos, and he's just he's just that guy that if I could have dinner with him, that would just be amazing.
Amazing. I love that. And yeah, I just look up to my mentors. They've changed my life. Like even now, the reason why I'm starting this podcast is because of him. Because I didn't know I had, like I said, back to beliefs. I didn't believe I could, share my voice. I struggled to share my voice for a long time and do this and help others. And he was the one who actually brought that gift in me. I
Awesome.
went to other people and they never said this, but he was like, you have a gift, and I want you to share, and I want you to start the podcast. I had a lot of hesitations, and I'm here today. We're having this conversation. It's reached tons of people, and I'm just grateful to him. So I totally understand where you're coming from, because one person can change your life completely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and coming from a place where I didn't have too much of support and no one really believed in me, because I'm the one who's always helping others, with their highest potential. So I'm always grateful to him. And even now, I still watch his stuff. He always checks in on me, and I always kind of help, hey, like, how's everything going? And he's just really gives his time and energy, right? That, and it starts from that unconditional love. And that's how I learned it from him. He
Mm.
just gave, like, other people were like, oh my God, it's like 30 minutes, 40 minutes. He was like, Bina, I'm happy to get on a call with you for 90 minutes. Like, let's do this. Like,
Right.
you're the best coach. You're the best this. He would always celebrate me. And that's how I celebrate my team members and my clients, right? So I learned it from our mentors, but it's so important to find the right one. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. So, Garrett, thank you. This conversation is such an important reminder that sustainable leadership isn't built by simply achieving more, but it's built by becoming more conscious of who we are, what we believe, and how those beliefs quietly shape every decision we make. So, when we transform the way we see ourselves, we naturally transform the way we lead, communicate, build relationships, and create the impact, whether it's for our people, our community, our team members, anyone. So I know our listeners are walking away with not just practical insights, but meaningful questions they'll continue reflecting on long after this episode ends. So, to everyone listening, if today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love for you to connect with Dr. Garrett on LinkedIn. He's there, and he always posts every day, which I love reading. So please connect with him. And I'd love for everyone to come into Sovereign Rise. It's literally a created global leadership ecosystem for everyone, whether an executive, as an executive coach, as well as entrepreneurs. It's really for the seasons of reinvention and expansion. So we have a community, which is like a sisterhood, brotherhood, right? And it's very important in these days of, you don't have to feel isolated. You don't have to do this by yourself, right? And we talk about these exact things, identity shifts going into detail. Honestly, I did an identity masterclass, and one person reached out to me saying like it made her cry because it really felt her. She felt seen and heard when I went through that journey, because I was talking on my own journey, right? So these are the kind of master classes we'll have on a monthly basis. Yesterday we just had our workshop on the same thing that we just talked about. So it's actually going globally now. We're partnering with people on a global level who we get different perspectives from, and bringing in people together, because it's very important to be in the right rooms, right? As we talked about, and the right environments with the right leaders. So if you're looking for a collective that values both inner transformation and tangible business growth, I'd love to welcome you. If you want to be a strategic partner or a speaker to share your value in that as well, let me know on LinkedIn. So thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Voices of Impact. And thank you again, Garrett, for this wonderful conversation. And if it sparks something within you, everyone, be sure to subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, even if it's one person. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.